Welcome to End of Life University on YouTube. Today, I'm sharing with you a fantastic conversation I had with filmmaker Krystina Christiansen and former hospice social worker Brenna Brooks. And they're telling the story today of a letter written by a very special hospice patient at the end of his life and the impact it has ended up having worldwide. It's a fantastic, touching story. You're going to love it. So stay tuned for that. I want to remind you to be sure and share this channel and the podcast with anyone else who might benefit from listening in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel down below and also subscribe and leave a rating and review for the podcast wherever you happen to listen. And if you'd like to make a small financial contribution to help keep us on the air, you can go to eoluniversity.com/support, and you'll find 3 different ways there you can make a donation and keep this show going. So we'll move on now with my conversation with Krystina and Brenna. Today, I'm so happy to welcome 2 guests to the podcast, Krystina Christiansen and Brenna Brooks. Krystina is a filmmaker based in Los Angeles. She has produced, directed, and written feature and short documentaries, scripted shorts, music videos, proof of concepts for TV and film, web series, branded media, corporate videos, higher educational content, and much more. So as you can see, she's a very skilled and practiced filmmaker. And she has recently wrapped filming a documentary short about an end-of-life letter she found while hiking in Hawaii, written by a man with late-stage MS. The project is currently running a campaign on Seed and Spark for finishing funds, and I'll be leaving a link for the campaign trailer where you can watch it. And that's the subject of our conversation today, is this documentary film and the story titled Dear Brandon. And Brenna Brooks has been a hospice social worker, and she, in fact, was Brandon's social worker during his last years of life. She's now working as a trauma therapist in Sandy, Utah. And so, Krystina and Brenna, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you. Very excited to be talking with you.
Well, we're going to be telling a story about this amazing person, Brandon. And I thought it would be nice to start by just introducing Brandon to our audience. So before we tell a little more of the story and how it all fits together, we all have a sense of Brandon. And Brenna, you're the person who knew him first. And so maybe you could start by telling us what you know about Brandon. And I'll just give a disclaimer here that you have received permission from Brandon to tell his story, as did Krystina, and because it's been filmed in the film. And so to make that clear to everyone that you're not divulging anything confidential, but you have permission to talk about this.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Brandon's story is very special to me. And so I want everybody to know right off the bat that, yes, I have his permission. I have his family's permission to also continue to share his story and to continue to share his love. So Brandon Lingwall was assigned to me in 2020 as a hospice social worker, and I got to go and meet him. And he had MS, and he was fully bedbound at that point in time. I think he got up one other time during the total of me knowing him out of his bed to sit in a chair for an interview with the news. But other than that, he was pretty much always in his bed when I met him.
And he was a young man, right?
Yes. He was 50 at the, or 47, 50 at the time. So very young. Like, Brendan and I bonded right off the bat because we felt like we were from the same generation, from the same age. He was the youngest person that I had ever worked with at that point in time. And because he lived in Sandy and I lived in Sandy, he went to the same high school as my husband. He had similar interests to me. We were both snowboarders, both rock climbers, both avid outdoors people. And so we immediately bonded in our love of adventure and being outside. And his sense of humor is going to be the first thing that you would notice about Brandon. He's wicked funny. He every time I went to go visit him, first off, I'd need to book more time because I would never be able to do it in the normal length of time allotted for, you know, a hospice visit. But I would also leave laughing hysterically. So he just had a way about him that instantly made me aware that this particular client, this patient, was going to be different and possibly was going to hurt more when he passed. But when I first met Brandon, one thing that was also clear, besides the love of the outdoors and the joy of making other people laugh, was that he was deeply depressed. And he was in the stage of dying where things weren't making sense. And there was a lot of anger and a lot of grief and a lot of sadness. And he was really searching for purpose and meaning making out of this experience. And as a hospice social worker, that's one of your jobs, is to help people make meaning of their lives and help people make meaning of the end of their life. And for Brandon, when we really drilled down, the biggest fear that he had was that he would die, be forgotten, and that his love that he has in his heart and in his body, that it would end and that it would cease to exist with his body dying. And it really struck me, and I didn't really have any instant like idea at that point. But I thought about it, and you know, as these things do, they make you think about your own legacy, your own life, your own, what am I doing here? And I found very similarly that I didn't want that for me either. Like, wow, that's some real truth telling there. There's some real honesty with this fear here, that he doesn't want his love to stop when he dies. And I went on a hike. It was shortly before grad school was starting for me. And I went in with one of my friends, or actually two of my friends, hiking up Mount Timpanogos, in part to also celebrate and memorialize the loss of my mom that had just passed a few months before. And so grad school is starting, this is all ending, and I go on this hike, and on this hike I found a letter just written up on the mountain, and it was just this person talking about their life, and I think they were just writing for themselves, you know, writing something that they wanted to remember, and they just left it up there. But the next time that I saw Brandon and talking to him, the idea came to me, and I think it was actually given to me. It's like, it feels like a divine source of knowledge for me, that we could do something for him by writing a letter together, and that I could hike it up and take it and leave it for someone, and that maybe he could write and share his love and the things that he wanted people to know, like the letter from the deathbed, basically. What would you want people to know? And that you would have a chance, Brandon, to say these things to anyone, and that people would find it. And so that's what we did. So that's what we did. I have the letter. I don't know if you'd like me to read part of it or some of it or all of it, but I could read some for you right now.
Sure. I was going to ask Christina, you having met Brandon, I mean, getting to know him, is there anything else you want to tell us about Brandon as we're introducing him to anyone before the letter's read?
I just second everything that Brenna says, especially with how funny He was like, even as you're saying that, I'm thinking of all these different conversations where it just constant laughter. And you would think walking into this situation, this person's home, that it might be a little different, but it definitely was not. It was filled with a lot of laughter and a lot of love.
Mhm. And I think that like seeing that laughter and then seeing that like it kind of went away for a while, that was what was so motivating to me to try and help him find a way to come back and find a way to still live out those rest of his days. And so I would, when you're a social worker, you're trying any intervention possible, and sometimes it's outside of a book of what you've read to do or any modality or anything that you've learned. It's just, hey, why not this?
And this letter, I assume he dictated it to you, so you're the one who wrote it out for him.
Letters with Brandon were always interesting to write, because I ended up helping him write up not only this letter but letters to give to his family after he passed. And so in writing any letter with Brandon, it would part be like, okay, so I want to say something like this, can you, but I don't know what like, help me write it out. And so I would type something and then be like, well, what about this? And he'd add that. But yeah, it was a collaboration process of getting his words out is with as most Brandon as you can say it. But he said, but you need to make me sound smarter. So we did what we could. I don't know if asking me to make him sound smarter would help, but
And so this was really a letter to the world in a way. It seems like.
Yeah, we really thought that like maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 people would see this thing and it would be kind of cool. I had no idea that my letter with Brandon, like this, not my letter, Brandon's letter, that this letter would do what it's done, that so many people would be touched by this letter, that so many people would have their lives changed. I had no clue. Hence, this idea was given to us. Like, it was not.
This was something bigger than all of us that happened.
And there's so many of those things that, like, I know Christina can tell you about too, but there's so many of these moments where if this had not been exactly the way it had been, like, for example, I went to Hawaii. I was the person that left the letter in Hawaii for Christina. Had I not twisted my ankle the day before I went to Hawaii, I definitely wouldn't have left that letter in that spot, because we had made plans to go do other hikes. And had her friend that she was with not twisted her ankle, they wouldn't have gone and chose this hike either. So for Brandon, the synchronicity and the beautiful destiny of like so many things happening like that, just it happens over and over and over. So it's really beautiful to see.
All right. Well, so let's hear the letter, and then I want to hear Christina tell her part of this story, because it's also interesting how it weaves together and how beautiful the whole tapestry of it is.
Okay, I'm gonna try and get through it. If you've ever read the letter, you know that you don't read the letter without crying.
It's a bit of a challenge, yeah.
Ooh, here we go. Hi, my name is Brandon. I'm from Sandy, Utah. It's already started. Oh my gosh, come on. If you happen to be reading this letter, I want you to know I believe it is for a reason. I want to share my story with you. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1999. Prior to my diagnosis, I was a very active person in outdoor sports of any kind. My favorite, by far, was snowboarding. Other sports I loved included soccer, hiking, mountain biking, camping, skateboarding, rock climbing, basketball, and tennis. Some of the best times in my life were camping at Lake Powell in Utah. I am now on hospice because my life is coming to an end. I feel I have so much more light and love to give in this world, and so my social worker suggested that I write a letter to share that love with you. She promised that she would hike it up to the top of a popular trail on the Wasatch Front and stash it somewhere so that other people hiking would hopefully find it and read it. So right here in this moment, this letter was meant for you. I want you to find and cherish everything that you love. I want you to make time for and hug the people that you love. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Because of MS, I have never physically been able to put my arms around my son, and he is 15 years old now. I was never able to teach him how to throw or catch a ball, skateboard, snowboard, or ride a bike. Everything physical a father should teach his son was not an option for me. It is the most difficult thing that I have ever had to deal with, and I'm a quadriplegic now, if that tells you anything. So please, please, please take it from me and spend as much time as you possibly can with the people you love. Hug them. Tell them how much you love them. Next, I would also ask that you always be impeccable with your word. People need to know that they can rely on you no matter what. If you are angry with someone or feel that you hate someone, put that crap behind you and forgive them. Hating something is just wasting your time. There is way too much hatred in this world. Every choice you make, whether it is bad or good, is up to you. So if you want something, then you must continue to make the right choices to get what you want. Go after your dreams and fight for them. One of my dreams is to continue to be able to spread love long after my body has left this earth. I want my message of hope and love to continue, and that is where you come in. Will you share your story with me? If you find this, will you please send me a text containing a little story, or just let me know that you found my letter and where it had traveled to? You have the opportunity to be my legs and arms. Feel free to add your story to this letter and share your love with the world too. If you are up for it, it would be awesome if you could just take a selfie with a view in the background and then text it to me so that I can see your joy and travel vicariously through you. Then he gives his phone number. After you find this, would you do me a favor and put it back in the Ziploc bag? You can either leave it here and take it to a different awesome location for somebody else to find. I would love to see how far it would travel. Thank you for reading my letter. Thank you for being here in this moment today. Now go and share all the love that you have with all the time that you have left. Brandon. And then he gives my name and my phone number, and that if he's passed, that Brenna will continue to share your stories with my family. You can also use For Brandon's Love or hashtag For Brandon's Love if you decide to share this on social media, or go to his Instagram account at For Brandon's Love 77. And then you can see all of the responses that have been sent to me from all over the world. And now to the letter, there's an update. The love and support that Brandon received from people like you miraculously extended his life for 2 more years. It gave him increased purpose and meaning to keep fighting. On 9/22/22, his fight came to an end, and Brandon is now free to join us on our adventures in the mountains. He's probably here with you now as you read this, wanting you to know how deeply loved you are. Please continue to share Brandon's love and keep sharing this letter. Death cannot stop his love. Please send responses to Brenna or Brandon's Instagram. It will mean the world to his family and his friends if you did.
Wow. So did you put it up in the mountains in Utah also? A copy of it?
I took it the first time to Sunset Peak in Alta and Brighton. It's kind of in both worlds, but Alta and Brighton. It's this beautiful peak that you can see 4 different lakes from, and it's just gorgeous. So I took it up there the first time.
And then you took it to Hawaii.
I took this, I hike regularly on Saturdays, and we let the first letter go for a while. It probably went for a couple months and went way farther than I ever expected. But then it kind of trailed off, and I could see, first of all, when Brandon got the letter, the first response from the letter, he called me freaking out. He was so excited. He was like, "They found it! Someone found the letter!" And it was like the life turned back on in his eyes, and it was like he was back. His family called me. They said, "I don't know what has happened, but Brandon's back. Brandon's back." Mm-hmm. And as the letter started to fade, I realized, why does there only need to be one copy of this letter? That's not how it needs to be. Like, I can take this letter up every time I go hiking. And so I did. I started to take it up every time I went into the mountains. And so now there's probably hundreds of these letters out in the world that have made it to all sorts of destinations. But like I said at the end, it kept him alive for another 2 years. I mean, he had to come off of hospice because he was doing so good. He no longer qualified for the benefits of hospice because it wasn't deemed that he had 6 months left to live.
Wow. Well, so Krystina, I'm excited to hear your part of the story and how you got into this and this whole thing that was happening, and how you got led to Hawaii and found the letter there.
Yeah, so a friend of mine was going to Hawaii. She asked if I wanted to come with her, and I was like, of course, yeah, who doesn't want to go to Hawaii? I also have family there, so it was just another reason to go. Leading up to that trip, throughout quarantine and all that, for me, it was a lot of me time and self-reflection. My industry also was pretty slow because it's very hard to do filmmaking if you can't be in person. So I filled that time doing what I love most, which is hiking. And I spent a lot of time outside, just really, really grateful for the fact that I even lived in a place where I could at least do that, because I knew people lived in other countries where you couldn't even go outside and walk your dog. So I was just really on this whole kick of gratitude and being really aware of the fact that I could move my body outside. So once we got to Hawaii and I found myself at the top of this trail, it was a very normal practice for me to just take a moment, just being really aware of how grateful I was to be able to do that, and knowing that not a lot of people could do that thing. And while we were up there, a friend sees this paper like flopping around because it was so windy. I mean, it was so windy. I'm surprised that letter did not fly away. It was so windy that day. But yeah, I was under a rock, and she's like, "What is this?" So we open it, and I remember actually as we were opening it, my friend was like, "Oh no, we're gonna cry, aren't we?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And that's before we even started reading it. And then we of course read that letter. And I think actually as Brenna was reading it, I remembered now that the letter was a big part of why it was so moving, but it was also the fact that someone had done that for him. I was just like, wow. I mean, not only is this letter amazing, but the fact that someone did that someone like kept the promise of bringing it to first Sandy, which was really confusing as to why I was flying in Hawaii, but then they also brought it to Hawaii. I was just really astounded by that act. And so we cried, of course, and then got back down, and I decided to text the number, really thinking that I was then going to have to text Brenna. I did not think that he was still alive. I just didn't think it was plausible. I thought maybe they were doing this like in memoriam practice and it's already had its run. So I just kind of laid it all out there, thinking that I was texting a number that was never going to text me back. And it turns out that he was still alive, and also probably just as shocked as I was that he was alive. And our friendship kind of blossomed from there. And it wasn't until I got news that he was taken off hospice that I was like, Brandon, like, this is a really good story. I mean, it was already a really good story, but I mean, this is incredible. And I can't help but ask, could I come and interview you? And he was like, yeah, I thought that was the whole point. Like, I thought that was why you were even contacting me. And I was like, no, I just was moved by your letter. Like, I wasn't always trying to make a film, but yeah, so then I got to go on the journey of meeting him and everyone else involved in his life, which has been such a joy.
So Krystina, did you take the letter somewhere else and leave it in another location?
Oh yeah, I've brought it all over the world. I've brought it everywhere I go. I definitely don't hike as much as Brenna, but I have copies in my car all the time. I have, like the copy on my phone in case I'm talking to someone about it. Yes, it's gone everywhere with me. I remember I brought it to Stonehenge at one point because he said he really wanted it to go to Stonehenge. So yes, anytime I'm out and about, I will have a copy of that letter with me.
And so then tell us, either one of you or both of you could talk about this. What kind of response has it been, and what kind of messages has Brandon received from what parts of the world?
I'll take that one. Just because I got to hear about so many of them directly from Brandon. I mean, and I want anybody that has ever sent Brandon a response to know how much it meant to him. It was never lost on him, the honor that it was that people took time to read it, number one, that they took time to let it prick their heart and touch them in a way that would move them to a response. That is something. That is love right in return. And so watching it go from, people that had lost family members, people whose family had MS. There's such a plethora of people whose family members had MS that have found this letter, and that this was the message and the memo that they needed and the time that they needed over and over and over. It also went to people that had lost a lot of people that were dealing with grief, a lot of people that were in active addiction and wanting to get their life back on track. I know that there were several people that read this letter and changed their lives and went to rehab and got clean. I know that there were people that were suicidal, and this letter activated in them hope and a desire to reignite the fire of their own life and to appreciate the gift that a life is. There were people that were training for big things and for big dreams. One in particular, Ryan, he was training for Everest and ended up carrying the letter to the top of Everest. Chris Fisher, he was training to break the record for the most amount of vertical ascension in a month, and he did that. He got the world record in the set so many fastest known times that you can't even keep up with the guy. He's amazing, and he carries Brandon with him still on those adventures. Christina, jump in, like, if you're thinking of any more stories that you can remember, but like there's so many incredible stories that you can't help but be inspired in return. So Brandon offers this inspiration, this like, hey, like, do something with your life. Like, this is incredible, this gift. And in return, everyone that writes back sends a similar message. And so it just compounds and grows and exponentially so.
Yeah, I love that he wrote in the letter, if you find this, it's for you. And it sounds like the people who found it and then took the time to read it, it really does feel like just divine synchronicity and timing, and even the way you came across it, Christina. And as you said, a few things could have been different and you never would have, the letter might not have been there and you never would have seen it.
Yeah. I think the other story of where the letter's gone that I just think is so fascinating was, didn't a pilot read it while they were flying over North Korea? So technically it's been like everywhere. I mean, even in places that you can't really go.
You can't get there. Yeah. That was one of the first ones. Like, it was so fast that it went to North Korea. I was like, that's not one that I would have expected to make it to North Korea. I'm from I lived in South Korea, so I knew we'd get it there. I had some people still there. I knew I'd get it to South Korea, but I didn't have any hope for that.
Yeah. It's so incredible. Yeah.
Wow, the stories just have to be phenomenal. And it sounds like people feel motivated to share the story or take a photo, because he asked for that as well. So of where they are when they found the letter. Well, I can't imagine what it must be like to come across a letter like this in a Ziploc bag that says, please read me, stuck underneath a rock. Like,
We're real high tech over here, guys.
But for me, of course, like, I'm reading that letter, I got to see what this is and see what this says. And then Brandon's request is just so heartfelt and authentic, like to please just share it with someone else, that it seems like no one could refuse. Whoever finds it is just compelled to take it somewhere else and show it to someone else.
Yeah, the fact that he's just asking you to be his arms and legs, I think that alone, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to take your story with me and I'm going to do the best in my own life to hold on to that and be part of your legacy. I think it's just such a wonderful thing to ask people, especially in that setting too, of being at the top of a mountain, because typically you get up there, like tired, like the view's cool, but you might be a little tired, and it's just such a perfect place, I think, to find something like that, because you're already pretty reflective. You've been in nature. It's a really beautiful experience.
And then everyone can relate to the fact that Brian loves nature so much and loved hiking and climbing and snowboarding, and yet couldn't do it for such a large part of his life. So if in any way, taking that letter somewhere blessed Brian, I keep calling him Brian, sorry, blessed Brandon. I mean, which obviously it did. He lived for 2 additional years because of all the love and the joy that was coming back to him.
That's so true. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Brenna.
It can be his heart too. And so I think that like, and as his body is no longer, I think that the opportunity to kind of bring Brandon back with every time you share this letter, every time, for me, I get to still respond to these people that are writing. So that opportunity to kind of continue his love and be his heart now, I think that shouldn't be skipped and should be taken for granted.
Yeah. And you've heard from what, thousands of people? Is that?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
You can go to his Instagram and you can read through the stories and the responses, and then read the responses to the responses. I mean, it's a good wormhole. It'll take you a long time. But I mean, it's incredible.
And then, Christina, you've had a journey in deciding to do a film about this, which it is a fantastic story. I know. Talk a little bit about your journey. I know you drove to meet Brandon, and kind of what that consisted of, and how that process went for you.
Yeah, I write this in the campaign page because it's so true, which is that storytelling has always been kind of a compulsion for me. We're all storytellers at the end of the day. For me, it was a bit more elevated in that I remember even as a kid trying to not write papers and instead doing little documentaries about a subject. And so I was just always with a camera, and I just can't deny a good story. So initially, though, with meeting Brandon, I again was not thinking that I was going to even have the time to do something like this. And I remember he did say at some point, Brenna, maybe you were involved with, like, he wanted to make a book with all the responses at one point. And I was like, that's such a good idea. And like I said, it wasn't until I got the news article about him leaving hospice that I really was called to just do it. I was like, I have a camera, I got a car, let's see what we can do with that. And so I did. And Brandon really did this remarkable thing of I asked him, who should I talk to about this? So I obviously I'm going to interview you, but who else should I talk to? And so he gave me, I think, 7 or 8 people to get to know. And I did not know this at the time, but now obviously in hindsight, I can see that it felt almost strategic. I don't know if it was, but he did such a good job of selecting everyone because their stories are so unique, but also so similar. And I think to the point also about the fact that Brandon loved being outside, there's that through line of, I think all of us, whether or not we said it in our interviews, we definitely use the outdoors as a way to heal ourselves. And I think that's another aspect to this, that when you recognize that and you meet someone through this letter that no longer has access to that, it's really moving, because then you start thinking, what would I do if I could no longer, I don't want to know, actually. And it's just heartbreaking. So then he sent me off, and I went to go meet all these different people as I drove from Los Angeles to Sandy, and interviewed everyone, dropped the letter on different mountaintops on the way because it's a beautiful drive, so why not? And then of course met Brandon, interviewed him and his family, and really I thought that was going to be it. I left Utah thinking like, okay, I'm going to cut this thing together, we're going to be done, and it's, and that's not what happened. Actually, the day that I left Brandon's house on the last day, I went to go visit my uncle, who also lives in Utah, while he was in the ICU. And I was kind of kicked off on this new journey of just having a lot of loss. Just so many people in my life started falling ill and dying, and I no longer had, honestly, the energy to put towards the project in that way. But of course I kept up the friendship with Brandon and everything, so I just kept filming, and I was like, all right, we'll keep filming for as long as I can at least do that much. And it ended up being more so showcasing this specific time with Brandon, but then also still following along with all the different characters, if you will, and what we were experiencing throughout our friendship with Brandon and how those things were intertwining. Some of that isn't captured on camera, some of it's through text message conversations I was having with different people. But I think now I can see that bigger picture of how, in a way, Brandon was building out his legacy, and we all got to be a part of that. So now the film rather, it's definitely based in his letter, and it's always been this response back to him, and it's a more thoughtful collective response, I would say, back to him through video.
It's interesting, Christina, as I listened to your story, and we talked a little bit before we started recording too, that it's almost as if Brandon's letter opened up a world in a way to you of loss and end of life issues and grief before you started encountering them in a way in your personal life, as if somehow his letter came with the right timing to maybe help you be more prepared when all of those cumulative losses started happening for you.
Oh, absolutely. And I had experienced loss prior to that, but it was with time in between to process it, I would say, appropriately, versus just so back to back. Yeah, and then also just being friends with Brandon, he was just someone that was willing to lean into the conversations. I definitely wasn't going to him with all of this, but if it would come up in conversation, he wasn't shying away from any of it. And that was very helpful, because I didn't have many people in my life that were willing to lean into those type of conversations in the way that he was able to. And he was also obviously so intimately aware of his own mortality at this time.
And so when did the two of you meet in this whole process?
When I was filming, that's when we officially met. Actually, I think we met, so yes, when we were filming, but Brandon put together like a full party. He fully on his own put together this gathering with everyone I was interviewing or was in town. And I think that's actually where I met Brenna, and he ordered food for everyone. Like he did that. No one helped him do it. He did it, which was so impressive. So yeah, that's where we met, was at this gathering of letter finders, which was so special.
Wow. When did the two of you put it together that, the specialness of Brenna leaving the letter where she did in Hawaii and you happening to find it? Like, when was that, when you first met each other, that story all came together?
That was during our interview, I want to say, which might have been like the next day we did our one-on-one interview. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I think so, right? Is that when we found out?
For me, I knew about it right when you responded to
Oh,
Brandon,
that's
because
right. That's
you
right.
called me
Okay.
and told me about Christina, and I was like, yeah, that's the letter I left. Awesome, right? Like, some of the letters I didn't take it to that place, so that got there by another way. But I know when I left the letter in Hawaii at that lighthouse, that it was that one's me. Like, I got to do that one. So I had that information, and I was just excited because it felt for me like someone saw it. Someone could see just how incredible this human being was, and just how special this story was, and just how special, like, the group of people was. for me, because it was still COVID times, like this is all happening in the period of COVID where we're all wearing masks. We're all, it's like when we're doing our interviews, if we take off a mask, we're staying far apart from each other. Like when Brandon pulled everybody together, part of this was hey, I'm dying anyways. So COVID be damned. I want to meet these people. And so when he pulled everybody together for that gathering, it was one of my first times to be able to meet so many of the people he had the relationships with. And for me, it was just kind of a sit back and be humbled moment of, you know, there's a lot as a social worker, there's a lot that you want to do. There's a lot that you wish you could give people. And sometimes you feel like you're making not like your efforts are just kind of going into the wind, like it doesn't really matter. But that was a paradigm shift moment for me, that we don't always get to see the effects of our actions. We don't always get to see, like, hiking a letter to the top of a mountain was like a no big deal kind of thing. Helping Brandon write this was a no big deal kind of thing. But in the life of Brandon, it was everything. And so, and I mean, he would go a little overboard with me sometimes and be like, you changed my life. You changed my life. And I'd have to reflect back and be like, well, you changed mine as well. You've changed mine because you've reminded me that, like, the little things do matter. The little things do make a difference. And so getting this group together and getting to see the ripples and getting to see Brandon's love, but also just that a little thing could matter, and then see Christina take that spark and give it a screen and give it life and energy so that literally the world can now find Brandon. And through this documentary, like, there are going to be so many lives that will be changed because it's increasing the scope and the capacity for people to find it. You know, finding it on a mountain is really kind of a once in a lifetime lucky scenario, but hopefully through this work that Christina's doing, Brandon's love will be able to be given to the whole world, and I can't wait to see where that goes.
Yeah, and I feel that way after I've only seen the trailer that you made, Christina, that's on your the fundraising page with, is it called Seed and
Spark? Yeah.
Seed and Spark. Oh, Spark. I love that it's a spark. But I've only seen the trailer, but it's beautiful and it's so compelling and lovely. And I cannot wait to see the actual film, because you're obviously a really talented filmmaker from what I see. And I'm just curious to know, like, where are you in the process, and what are your next steps, and what are your goals for the film?
So we're still full speed ahead on our campaign month. We reached our goal way earlier than any one of us would have ever expected, but we're still, pushing it out there, getting different companies to work with us that are in the outdoor community and might be interested in just being a part of getting this story out. Once the campaign is over, we're going to be officially building out our post-production team. So that'll be a finishing editor. I love to edit, but I'm also not the strongest editor. So we will have a finishing editor that will come on and just make sure that everything is pretty, that it's color corrected, and that the sound is even, and that it's ready to go on a larger screen. We're also bringing on some music composers, which I'm so excited about because I love music. And we're also starting to build out our campaign plan for festivals, because that's really where the film will get its legs and people will hear about it. We might get hopefully a distributor at that point that can put it on a streamer or whatever they decide to do with it. So far, that's the plan, is just to get it finished and get some more storytellers in to help me kind of reflect these ideas and make sure it makes sense outside of my own brain, and then get to festival. Hopefully someone will love it and buy it so they can distribute it out into the world, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
And I could just imagine, as Brenna was talking about the ripples from the letter itself, but even the ripples from creating a film, the people who work on the film must feel touched by it as well, because they hear all about the story, and it's so compelling. And I mean, literally, I've had goosebumps the entire time we're sitting here just talking about it, because it's an amazing story. So I imagine everyone who touches it in any way feels somehow inspired or changed by it.
Oh yeah. Whenever it's funny, I the letter obviously still touches me. I think also I've told the story so many times that there's a part of it that's kind of faded a little bit until I'm sitting at coffee with another filmmaker and I'm pitching them this idea that I'm working on, and I'm just looking at it still as a pitch, and the next thing I know, this person that I only know professionally is crying. And it's happened so many times. I've seen so many of my colleagues cry in front of me when I tell them this story, and everyone is deeply moved by Brandon and deeply moved by the community that he's built around him. And the unsung hero in this, also I have to mention, is my producer Kate, who was with me this entire time. And she let me use her car to go to Utah because my car is too old to handle that. She was, with us in all these interviews. She's not a cinematographer, but she was there holding the other camera. She's there helping with us in post-production, making sure the story is flowing. So yes, there's been a lot of filmmakers that, even when we were out and about looking for people to help us film this, because we didn't have many resources, we were texting like friends of friends, and people would say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm booked. But it's funny you mentioned this, because I actually found the letter on this peak like 2 weeks ago. So it was so interesting to see how all these people were somehow either already connected, or then once learning about the letter, they were just all in. And to this day, they're still checking in, seeing how things are going, and just been really, really supportive of this entire process from the very beginning.
Wow.
Christina, as you were saying that, I was thinking about how Kate, in many ways, like actually being the vehicle that gets you there, right? Like being the legs and the arms for you, the way that you are being the legs and the arms for Brandon and getting this story out. Like that is what you see time and time again, is that the people that hear Brandon's story are inspired with this message of what more can I do? How can I share? What gift can I give that keeps this going? It's that perpetual moving forward. It's the pay it forward idea. Like it just really hit me as you were talking about that. Yeah, Kate was absolutely doing for you what you were doing for Brandon. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I completely agree. She's amazing.
Wow.
Love you,
Like,
Kate.
the right people have been called together for this, and it's really amazing to see. And Brenna, I wanted to mention, for any hospice workers listening out there, I just feel like we should give them a reminder, first of all, of the importance of helping people with legacy projects. When people are trying to find meaning at the end of their lives, it's a really big deal. It's really important that we help them and use our creativity or find any way we can to help them create that legacy. And we have no idea what impact it could make in the world. And this is such a great example of it. Like, just come up with crazy ideas and make suggestions, and help people create things at the very end of their life, and let them go and see what happens, like you did.
It's an experimenting process, right? Like interventions always are. And some of them will land and some of them will knock it out of the park. And some of them are a very big miss. Like I had done interventions with Brandon to try and get him out of this depression before. Like I had tried other things and it wasn't working. And I think being creative and and getting outside of the box really, Brandon changed the way that I practice as a social worker, and he changed the way that I even practice now as a trauma therapist. Like I am different because of Brandon. There are things and modalities and rules to things, and I lean into the curiosity of what can we create together so much more now. Like I said at the beginning, I helped Brandon in writing letters to his family before he passed. And doing that is very hard. Like, I'm just like, some of these interventions are gonna impact you as you do them, and I think maybe that's why people might shy away from them. But like, helping someone write, you know, a letter to their son, like, what's the last thing you want your son to read after you're gone? Writing those things can be taxing, and they're hard. But at the same time, it was so beautiful to have him make sure that nothing was left unsaid. And one of the most beautiful moments for me with Brandon was after he died. There was this moment of sadness because I handed those letters out to his family and his loved ones, and we didn't get to them all because he died before we were done. We worked on it for week after week after week, but he died before they were done. And he had put my name on the list with me to write a letter to me. I was like, okay, that goes at the bottom, right? We're gonna take care of the others. But after he died, another social worker that also got to work with him, who is one of my dear friends, came to me with a letter from Brandon for me. And it's one of my most cherished possessions because I got to see myself through his eyes, which is quite a humbling gift. And I got to know the impact that I had made, and I get to keep it. So I didn't get to ever find the letter like Christina. I was thinking when she was talking, like, oh, I wish I want to find this letter someday. Like, I just want to find it. I do hike that often. But I did get a letter after all. And so I kind of share that with you, Christina, too.
Wow, that's just so beautiful. And the whole story is so touching. And I have this hope, even with this podcast interview, that this forms another ripple going out to people who will be inspired in many different ways. Who knows, maybe somebody's listening who actually found the letter themselves, or maybe they'll get inspired to do something creative with someone they know who's at the end of life. And maybe they'll also be inspired to support your campaign, Christina, and like, let's help get this film out there, because the film is part of the ongoing legacy, and it's going to change the world even more than the letter has so far. So I'm on your team. I'm really excited to help support this campaign and to see this film get out to the world.
Thank you. I really do appreciate your support. And I'm excited too that the film will reach the people who maybe aren't capable of going on those hikes. That was kind of the driving force for me in a way. I have since interviewed with other people who are in various stages of having MS, and they are very much like Brandon, that they also love being outside, and I'm sure they would have loved to find the letter, but as of now, there's no way for them to do that. So my hope is that through film, they'll be able to have their own discovery experience. And I really want the film to give as much of a campfire feeling as conversations with Brandon used to give me. And I remember telling him a lot that talking with him really felt like that unique experience of sitting around a campfire, cell phones, there's no service. So you're really like locked in and engaged with the person. And he had a really unique gift of being able to converse with people in that way. So I hope that it gives people that feeling when they're watching it, that they're locked in and engaged with people in the outdoors.
Wow, really beautiful. Well, let's remind everyone first, where can they go, Christina, to help support the crowdfunding campaign? It's Seed and Spark, but
yeah, it's seedandspark.com/fund/Brandon. And that will be running until September 22nd of 2023. And then after that, you can still go to that campaign page to follow along where we're at in our status of everything. But more than anything, I would say also to follow, as Brenna mentioned, his Instagram, just to really see like these responses back to this day are just incredible, and they're so inspiring. So that's at Instagram.com/forbrandonslove77. And then on my website, KrystinaChristiansen.com/Brandon, I'll be updating that with behind the scenes of where we're at in the process of the film. So if anyone's interested in how they can continue to support by following along, that would be the place to go.
That's fantastic. And then Brenna, are you still continuing to receive messages, because your number was on the letter
Yes,
as well?
I am.
So
it remains on there. It's my home number, guys. Yep. It's yeah, I still receive messages. We got one over the weekend and I posted it. It's still happening. It's absolutely incredible.
That's amazing. Well, it's all very inspiring, and this it feels like such a good news message in a way, and such a positive message that I think everyone really needs to hear right now. I think Brandon's wisdom and his love, that's something we could all use more of in our lives and to share. So I just want to thank both of you for spending this time with me and talking about this amazing story.
Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful, and I'm grateful that you have taken this yourself and found it, and by even using your platform to share his story, you're now a part of our family, and you're now a part of Brandon's story and sharing his message. His family will hear this, his followers will hear this, and all the people that love him get to be reminded of what a great man he was because of your efforts. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for continuing to share Brandon's love.
Oh, thank you so much.
And welcome to the family.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. I hope we stay connected. Keep me posted on everything that's happening with the film and with the Instagram page. And I'm right there with you. My heart's with you all the way.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. I hope you loved that story about Brandon's letter and the amazing impact it has had. And again, be sure and tell other people about this particular episode and share it far and wide. Also, check out the Seed and Spark fundraising page and consider making a contribution to let's get this documentary film done and out into the world. So until the next time we're together, I'll see you and take care.